Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. I am so excited about this podcast because I have two brothers. First of all, I've interviewed them several times in the past. Every time I've interviewed them, every time I put them out, tremendous number of hits, still getting hits. They're friends of the show, two very courageous individuals, very different backgrounds. David Horowitz, his autobiography is Radical Son. Check that out. I love reading it because I myself am a former Marxist and all. And when I was reading his book, it was just sort of like going down memory lane. It was amazing. And then Dexter Pitts here, this brother, has an amazing story. His book, I Am Pitts, you can get that at Amazon.com. You can also get Radical Son at Amazon.com. And it just fascinated me. I said, I had to bring these two guys together to engage in a discussion about things because they have such different backgrounds, obviously different looking guys. I mean, it'd be sort of hard for Dex to sort of try to pass and then for David Horowitz to try to pass, But clearly two different individuals, background and all, and yet in tune with one another. Both of them great patriots. Really in tune with one another. But you're going to hear that. You're going to hear that during this interview. Guys, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being here.
It's always a pleasure to be on Book Talk with Corbin. I appreciate you. It's a pleasure to be in the presence of Mr. Horowitz, though. I mean, this guy's a powerhouse. All the books he's written and, calling out all the craziness in our world today.
Yeah.
We need more. We need more like him.
I'm telling you, I remember one time, Dex, I was interviewing Mr. Horowitz and about one of his prior book releases, and I said, he said, "Well, I got another one coming out. I just can't stop." I turn on the water faucet, and it's just like, "Someone turn it off." He's something. But Mr. Horowitz, let's start off right offhand. Dex is someone who was here in Louisville around the whole Breonna Taylor protest. He's literally in the front line. I mean, I think a couple of protesters actually spat on him, used the N-word and all. But you give us some perspective. What's your perspective on Black Lives Matter?
It's a criminal, racist, anti-American organization. Its leadership should be in jail. The subtitle of my book is How a Racial Hoax is Killing America. And the hoax is this idea that there's a war, particularly by police, against Black people. There's no statistic that supports that. There's no systemic racism in police departments. If there were, there would be massive legal suits because, we won the Civil Rights War battle. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is explicitly designed to outlaw institutional racism and systemic racism. There are legions of Black lawyers, assume with the Democrats that all white people are racists. Sorry about I have a
Sounds hungry.
menagerie. This is why I write so many books. I just communicate with my dogs. Systemic, if there were, even if you assume, as the left does, that white people are racist by birth, how racist is that?
Oh, man.
Even if you assume that, there are thousands of Black attorneys. The civil rights battle was won. So there are thousands of Black attorneys, Black DAs, Black attorney general. The chief prosecutor in the death of George Floyd was Keith Ellison, a follower of Louis Farrakhan. He was the attorney general for the state of Minnesota. And they, in 60 Minutes, interviewed him after the trial and said, was there a racial dimension to the death of George Floyd? And he said, no, we couldn't find one. This is a direct quote. We couldn't find one. This cop, whatever his faults, and there are many, was married to a woman of color. And there was no evidence presented at the trial that he had any racial animosity whatsoever.
Right. I'm going to stop you there, Mr. Horowitz, and we're going to go to Dex. Dex, you're with the Louisville Metro Police Department.
Oh yeah.
Obviously here in Louisville, Kentucky. And as I've said many, many times, you're on the front line during these Breonna Taylor protests.
Yep.
And I want to make this clear. Dexter Pitts is not speaking for the LMPD. He's only speaking for himself. He's only expressing his opinion. But Dex, as a black police officer, do you believe the Louisville Metro Police Department has it out for black folk, that they're say, hey, let's go get us a black guy today, beat him up, or hey, let's go raid Breonna Taylor's house because she's a black woman? I mean, could you give us?
We were talking about LMPD in the 60s and 70s. I'll probably be like, you know what? Yeah, it was a bit of a different time back then, but current, not even close. There's no way that's possible. I've worked with these guys for over a decade. I've seen white officers rush to help a black person in need more times than I can count or remember, and if we need any more further clarification on how evil of an organization Black Lives Matter is, just look at the incident we had happen here in Louisville about 2 weeks ago. Craig Greenberg running for mayor in Louisville. He's Jewish. What happens? A former Black Lives Matter activist who disappeared for 2 weeks goes to Craig Greenberg's office and tries to kill this man, fires 5 shots and supposedly misses him. And guess what happened? So we respond to the scene. I wasn't there that day. All my fellow officers go to the scene. They detain Quintez Brown. And look what happened. BLM comes in. The whole Bell Project comes in. And this man is bailed out of jail in less than 72 hours after that incident. This man tried point blank kill a Jewish mayoral candidate, and no one said anything about it.
Now, let me
Black Lives Matter raised $100,000 bond for him to get him out of jail the next day.
Right. Now, let me make this clear for my listeners.
Are assassins. I mean, that just shows it. Who would donate to an assassin except somebody?
Exactly.
And now let me just make this clear for my listeners. This shooting was basically in a public place in broad daylight. Was that correct? Is that correct?
Yeah. It was down on Story Avenue, man, down in the Nulu, or not the Nulu district, but the Meatpacking district. My God. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Butchertown in Louisville.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Horowitz, as Dex pointed out, the brother who was almost assassinated, and I guess that's all you can call it, is assassination, because it's not like they were in an argument, then one thing led to another. This guy was
political assassination.
Yeah, I mean, that's
domestic terrorism is what it's called.
Exactly.
White House, but that's what it is.
Do you think there's any possibility there's some anti-Semitism playing here?
Totally. I haven't read it, but I saw Miranda Devine, who's New York Post reporter, and looked up his social media, said he's an anti-Semite. Mm. I haven't been up on his social media, but it stands to reason. Why would he pick Greenberg? I mean,
but when you're black in this country at this point in time,
what the left has done is it has pushed forward the criminal element in the black. Every community has a criminal element. Criminal element in the black community. It's give them a rationale of social justice for their crimes or reparations. What I have to say about reparations is, sue the government that enslaved the slaves, not the government that freed them.
I like that. That's deep. I like that.
Now, Dex, just about
it's criminal extortion is what it is. The pace was set by Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, where they would go to corporations. After the death of Martin Luther King, everything went downhill. They would go to corporations and say, put $1 million on the table as a contribution to us, or we're going to boycott you and call you racist. And that's why all these corporations, they're scared of the Black Lives Matter times. It was the Panthers before that.
That's unfortunate. Yeah.
Now, Dex, about a few seconds ago, you were about to make a comment about BLM and getting this young black guy out of jail, the bond and all. As a police officer, how do you? I mean, I know this is a silly question, but how do you feel about that? I'm going to speak to both of you as a citizen. This guy strikes me as dangerous, and then on top of that, you've had a lot of local leftist professor like Dr. Ricky Jones say, "Oh, this guy he's emotionally hurt and things like that." But it's dangerous to me.
But that's the entire problem we have right now in Jefferson County, where it says, so you commit a crime, no matter the crime, you can instantly assure that you're going to be put on HIP, house incarceration, the home incarceration program. You're going to be free. Of course, you're not allowed to leave your house, but who's actually going to listen to that? And that has been the problem in Louisville over the past few years. And that is also the reason we have the skyrocketing crime rate. I mean, Corbin, you've been in Louisville for a while. Did you ever think that you would see 189 bodies in the streets here in Louisville? And not just 189 bodies. About 80% of those are bodies of young black men and women.
Yes.
It has become a repeated process. And now we're at this place in America where we have black people are a extremely protected class. And so no matter what they do, it's not their fault. It's the fault of, the evil, the evil white man and all this bullcrap that constantly gets put out there repeatedly. And so they are justifying the evil actions of people.
Yeah.
Mr. Horowitz?
I always like that phrase that black people are oppressed because they're marginalized. Black community is the center of national attention. I mean, blacks are 13% of the population. They must be 70 or 80% of for example, the ads on TV from big corporations. Mm-hmm. All in Black History Month and Black Lives Matter. If that was a white organization that went around sowing hatred of cops, burning cities, what do you think would happen?
Oh,
and they repass. It's just terrible. And I think the worst thing that the left has done is that black people were here before anyone. The Black Americans are kind of the original Americans, if you will, going back to the 17th century. And to turn them, or to attempt to turn the Black community against America, which led the world in freeing the slaves, all the kind of slanders, like there was 400 years of slavery in America. No, there wasn't. America was created in 1787 with the signing of the Constitution. And within a little over a generation, 73 years, at the cost of 360,000 mainly white lives, black lives too, but mainly white lives, slaves were freed. I mean, Black Americans can be proud of this country. Of course, the South was 100 terrible years that South tried to take revenge. But the spirit of the country has always been to treat everybody as equal. And it's been a long, hard struggle because of human nature.
Mm-hmm. The word struggle, every time I hear the word struggle, I always think of black people and we always say, the struggle, we down with the struggle. And I always have to tell my fellow people of color, like, man, black people, we do not own the corner market on struggle. To be human is to struggle. Every class of people that has existed since the beginning of time has struggled. I was like, do you think the Pilgrims did not struggle to cross the Atlantic to get here to start a new life? Amen. Do you think the Egyptians did, they had struggles? The Jews, my Lord, they have struggled and they continue to struggle, but they continue to advance too, though. It's just this whole victim mentality. It's not getting us anywhere. It's just continuing to hold us back. And I tell people, yes, America is not a perfect country. There are still going to be issues. Are there racists? Of course there's going to be racist people, but that does not make up the majority of the country. I can't tell you the last time somebody has come up, a random white guy's come up to me and just started dropping M-bombs on me. That doesn't happen. And if they do, it's some crazy guy in downtown Louisville laying in the gutter, covered in his own urine, trying to call me the N-word and trying to get a reaction out of me. And I'm like, what are you going to do about it, dude? You know what I'm going to do? Nothing. I'm going to step over him as he's laying in his gutter, get in my company car, and drive to my nice house.
There you go. There you go. Brother Horowitz, I'm going to give you the last word, and then we got to conclude here.
I'm going to buy Dexter's book because, like 20 or 30 years ago, since I was raised by communists, so I was part of the civil rights struggle from the time I was 9 years old, which is a very long time ago. But I realize, and I've written several books just on the race issue, and trying to restore sanity to the discussion. But I realized 20 or 30 years ago and said that my words cannot make the difference. I can influence people, but until there's a Black leadership that comes forward and stands up the way Dexter is standing up, nothing's going to happen. So I take
Amen.
I appreciate it.
Real confidence from that in the future of our country.
Amen.
Because the emergence of an articulate, courageous, I mean, the big thing here, of course, people, is courage. The left cannot, they can wound you with words. If you're afraid of being called a racist, or if you're called names, you can't fight this war. But there are so many people now who are standing up for what they can see is the truth, rather than for what the left is trying to sell.
Those are perfect. Those are perfect words to end this interview on. And I want to urge my listeners, please go to Amazon.com, check out, buy.
Could I add one thing? I meant
Yes.
I've taken out an ad for my book, I Can't Breathe. And I had my researcher look up the number of cops who've been killed since the death of Floyd because of this hate campaign against police. I was shocked that there have been 973 policemen murdered.
Oh, yeah.
All that blood is on the heads of Black Lives Matter and the Democrat Party for encouraging this nonsense. I mean, you want to talk about a hate movement? That's what Black Lives Matter is. It goes so far. In my book, I described, you remember there was a demonstration in Dallas, and a maniac, he was a veteran,
Oh, yeah.
Black guy, assassinated 5 police officers. And Patrice Cullors, who's the founder of Black Lives Matter, I read her book. And in her book, he was blown up by a robot because he was holed up inside a college and firing it, trying to kill more people and more police. And she turned him into a victim. First person blown up by a robot, ignoring the fact that the guy who gave the order was the Black police chief of Dallas.
Yeah.
And this guy was a homicidal maniac.
You know what? I actually wrote about that in my book as well, because I carried that with me during the protests. My biggest fear was getting set up in an ambush like that in the middle of the street. And it actually happened. We had 2 of our officers shot in September of 2020. You know, and I will never forget that day getting off the bus and those shots rang out. We were caught in the middle of a parking lot. And lo and behold, it's not just 2 officers. It's a Black officer and a white officer. Yes. And the assailant is Black, shooting a Black officer and a white officer. You know, it's just, you can't make this stuff up. But that whole Dallas incident, man, that still sticks with me to this day.
All right. Guys, I want to thank you both. I want to say to my listeners again, Radical Son, David Horowitz, Amazon.com. Dexter Pitts, I Am Pitts, Amazon.com. Folks, we got to buy books like this. And as Brother Horowitz points out, we've got to not only buy books like I Am Pitts, but buy an extra copy and share them with folks. Give them out as birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, whatever. Particularly young people. They've got to be. They got to hear from people like Brother Dex. Just like, my generation, my father's generation, they heard about Booker T. Washington, and it made a major difference. Guys, I want to thank you both. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Another was on I would like to be able to contact Dex. I'd like to send you 10 copies of I Can't Breathe for your fellow officers. It's got
absolutely
a lot of ammunition.
Yes.
We'll make that happen, brother. No problem. We'll make that happen. Thank you, guys. Thank you both. I'll be in touch.
Thanks, Corbin. Thanks, Doc.